Okay, it's been a while since I've done a video like this. But anyhow, I'm going to go ahead and do this here video. Because, there's a question people's asked for years in TFL. And many people have said it. Okay, they couldn't figure it out. Even Sandman couldn't figure out how come True Force Loneliness movement, people within it, like myself, would talk about politics, would talk about the political end of it. They didn't understand how come we would talk about NWO topics or the political end of anything when it comes to dating. And that was more or less above their IQ. And that's because they had no idea. So this video here, hopefully you'll have more of an understanding of why that was done. Because this is the raw truth in your face. Okay, so with that being said, I got a series of things to show you, so watch out.
We live in a seriously messed up world. A world in which not everything you see with your eyes or hear with your ears is what you think it is. A lot of what you see is fake, not real, illusory. Your senses tell you it's one thing or one way, but it turns out to be something entirely different. In fact, the deception can be so thick, so unbelievable, so shocking, that you probably think that the person you've been looking at for the past couple seconds is a hot chick in a bikini. It's not. This dude's name is Gregory Alan Lazzarato, better known as Gigi Gorgeous. He, who wants you to believe he's a she, is a Canadian model, actor, and internet personality.
Hey guys, it's Gigi.
Today's society wants us to call him a she. But I don't care if you cut off his wanker, pump him with estrogen, give him tits, and slap 5 pounds of Maybelline on his mug. He's still a guy. But there's a bigger picture here. There are powerful forces in this world devoting their full time on this planet to taking control of your mind, molding the way you think, shaping the way you perceive reality. They know that if they can change the way you think, they can control the way you behave. And what is behavior but merely the product and mirror of the way you think?
Okay, that's it in a nutshell, right in your face. Because that's all reality, that's all truth right in your face. So then you wondered why politics was involved in the dating arena. So let's take a look at a whole bunch of examples of how they keep division alive and healthy. That comes from the political end. That's right, bankers and your politicians and your media and Hollywood. Yeah, it's a whole combination of things. It's called brainwashing. It's called social conditioning. Take your pick which way you want to say it. See, a lot of people say, well, no, nobody brainwashed us. They couldn't brainwash me. Aren't you smart for that? Blah, 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 blah. You hear people say that crap all the time. That's because they don't know what brainwashing is. See, all brainwashing is one's ability to change somebody's thought process to make them believe in something that is not true. And the best way to brainwash an entire population, which is done all the time regularly, is to get them when they're young, when they're kids. So easily shaped. And for the rest of the people, well, use Hollywood. That's right. Use your television set, use music, make it a norm, social conditioning. And voila, we got our results. We made everybody believe in something that's not reality. And then you all turn your back and you look the other way when it comes against what they've told you to think. It's sort of like you think with your brain or you think with their brain, and they want you to think with their brain, that brain in the jar on the shelf. Okay, but anyhow, I want you to remember what you just watched, what you just seen. Remember the words, because that's all correct. Now pay attention.
Victims of domestic violence we rarely hear from. Tonight, the men who break their silence about violent wives and partners who attack them.
I was stabbed 5 times by my ex-partner.
You are a violent woman. Why do you beat up on men?
It's graphic
From the operation they had to give me to save my life.
and, in many ways, still taboo to talk about.
They're just not being believed. That silence is a killer.
You get away from me, you psychotic animal.
Tonight, the often untold side of domestic violence, where men are the victims.
If I did to her what she did to me, I wouldn't be sitting here, I'd be in jail.
Nobody wants to know about male victims of domestic violence.
Mainstream domestic violence literature reports women being at risk. Statistics showing, on average, 1 woman a week is killed by a former or current partner.
Every reference in here is all pointing to the male being the perpetrator.
And what do you think of that?
It's just wrong because it's not always the male who is the perpetrator.
So, what are the statistics when it comes to men? On A Current Affair, we've covered many domestic violence stories, and every time we do, our inbox fills with emails and messages from men and their families saying they're victims. Now, we know some women's groups will challenge what you're about to hear.
Yes, you're going to have brainwashed people challenge what they're about to hear. That's right, women's group, feminist group. And vaginas. That's right. They wish there was a man, you know, them guys that was neutered a long time ago and actually the girls in a man's body. Because they can't possibly be a man because you like to call them manginas. Ain't nothing manly about their behavior. They're just right out vaginas. Okay, so these will be the people that will challenge the truth with a lie. And they'll keep turning their back and looking the other way. That's right. And allowing it to progressively get worse and worse and worse. Yeah, that's who they're talking about there. Watch out.
Some rubbing alcohol, a lighter, and absolute terror.
It was just extreme heat and flames, and it seemed like the whole house was on fire.
The house was not on fire, but Melvin McDaniel was. His arms, chest, and hands engulfed in flames. He battled to tear off his burning clothes.
I finally ripped them off, and I was standing in the kitchen naked. I could see my skin on parts of my shirt on the floor. I could see it smoldering.
See it and smell it. The putrid odor of burning human flesh.
The smell was awful.
And the aftermath was too. McDaniel spent more than a month in the hospital and suffered through 8 operations. He still carries around the scars, and it is a heavy burden. A daily reminder of the woman McDaniel says intentionally set him on fire, burning away his flesh, his ego, and his peace of mind. That woman was his girlfriend.
Was she trying to kill you?
I think so.
And if he's right, she would certainly not be the first.
Here, a report which says 1 in 3 are victims of some kind of abuse. They simply just don't always report it.
That was probably one of the hardest things, was the shame, was it?
You are
You're psychotic.
violent,
Psychotic. You're so...
This is the violent and frightening side of Phil Hunt's private life he used to keep secret.
Break me glasses again. You're so... Hayley, all on record.
And this, a woman who almost killed her former partner, Simon Lanham.
Is it okay for a woman to hit a man?
There are 2 sides to every story.
Cherie Maxfield. Hi, I'm Lisa from A Current Affair.
But the scars of domestic violence don't lie.
Look at this. You stabbed him.
I did not do that. That's operation.
You stabbed him. You stabbed him.
Yes, I did.
In fact, if Cherie Maxfield was a man, she'd be labelled a monster.
This is exactly the same as the knife she used to stab me with.
There was things thrown at me.
Like what?
Pots and glasses, and I remember one night she threw like a ceramic vase type thing at me, and it just shattered on the wall, like she threw it that hard. And luckily I dodged it.
You didn't retaliate at all?
No.
Why?
No. It was just wrong.
Seconds before Phil Hunt hit record on this video, he says his partner of 4 years attacked him in an all too common rage. Was there a point where you feared for your safety?
Yeah, it did. As there was times that especially when she was in the kitchen throwing things. I'm just glad there wasn't a knife around.
What would she do?
A lot of pushing, a lot of shoving, a lot of right up in your face, you know, real angry.
When you say pushing and shoving, how violent was it? How aggressive?
Fairly aggressive. Fairly aggressive in the fact that there was a couple of times she pushed me and I actually fell over.
Like many female victims, Phil kept up a happy facade. When he did finally go to police for help, he says a policewoman dismissed him.
She basically told me, just man up and deal with the problem because, you know, because my ex was quite small, like say she wasn't a large girl or anything like that, she sort of looked at her as if to say, how could she do any damage to you?
The court reports show that you've had a previous relationship that was also violent. You are a violent woman. Why do you beat up on men?
No, I do not.
Why is it
Cherie Maxfield is a convicted domestic violence perpetrator, and she doesn't like it when she's the one being confronted.
Why is it okay for a woman to hit a man?
In a fit of rage, she nearly killed her former partner, Simon Lanham, ending what he says were 5 torturous years of dangerous physical abuse.
Well, they told me that I should have died. They can't understand why I'm not dead.
He says you've thrown things at him, that you've spat in his face.
Cherie Maxfield attacked and then stabbed Simon multiple times with a steak knife, just like this one.
It wasn't the first time she'd attacked me with a knife, but she'd always come at me when I could see her coming so I could stop her, but it was dark and she got me from behind.
Well, what do you think, Cherie, about men who hit women? What do you think about...
I think there should be something done about domestic violence when it comes to... What? I can't do
So what about women beating men? Do you think something should be done about women who beat men?
Each year in this country, 600 men are killed by their wives, girlfriends, or exes. You hear the statistics for female victims of domestic violence.
We know that every 15 seconds a woman is battered.
But how often is a man battered by a woman in the United States? Well, the number is the same, every 15 seconds. At least according to Richard Gellis. Gellis is considered one of the country's leading experts on domestic violence. He has made a career of talking to victims and perpetrators, and what he's discovered is that
the women are as likely to initiate the violence as the men.
And it might surprise you to know that Gellis says 1/4 of all domestic violence cases involve men who don't hit back. That's what the numbers say. In this room in Sacramento, California, you'll find the people who back them up.
Somebody was going to die in my house. I was ready to fight to the death over who didn't change the toilet paper roll.
These 3 women have all been locked up for violent behavior, usually against a husband or boyfriend. The women have also done time in an anger management class run by Claudia Diaz.
Do you think people would be surprised how many women come here?
Amazed. I think they would be surprised how many women engage in physical violence.
The Sacramento program is one of just a handful of anger management programs in the U.S. targeted toward women who abuse their male partners.
You think that can't nothing happen to you. I mean, you just can go through life and do it and hit and slap and punch. And I thought it was really cool to be a tough guy. Yeah, oh, yeah. Defend yourself.
So if there are men who are victims of domestic violence, it seems that there would be shelters to house those men. Well, we searched the whole country and found just one domestic violence shelter that accepts men. We found it here in the middle of the California desert.
That should have been a big red flag. Yep. That's what that should have been, is a gigantic red flag. They searched the whole country, the United States as big as it is. And out of all of the states in the United States, they could only find one domestic shelter for men. But in every state in the United States, there's domestic shelters for women. That's right. In every state in the United States, you will find a domestic shelter for a woman. But if you're looking for a man, no, you have to go to California. And then it's in the middle of the desert, way away from population. And that don't scream red flags to you? Then you definitely have issues.
Show you the outside of the shelter because we want to protect the men, women, and children who stay here. We can show you the inside, places where those children can finally play without fear. Rick Stratton participates in the shelter's outreach program. His wife did time for 6 felonies, including stalking, abuse, and causing grave bodily harm. He says she broke his ribs, his jaw, and his confidence, and when doctors treated his injuries, he lied.
I'm getting 3 or 4 stitches in my jaw, and I'm telling them that I fell down and hit a TV.
Stratton says he knew a 180-pound tattooed guy would be laughed at if he asked for help.
There's 100,000 male victims in our society who, when they present themselves as victims, the best they can hope for is that they'll be taken seriously, but more often than not, they'll be laughed at.
Desperate. The situation is just desperate.
Jasmine Newman of Relating to Men says the problem is far more widespread than people think.
There's no shelters, there's no counselling, there's no services available to them. You know, we provide government-funded services for women, but we're not providing government-funded services for men.
She says she sees husbands, partners and fathers driven to the brink of suicide.
We all feel pain the same, and we need to take away this approach that domestic violence is gendered.
It just messes with you completely because you find that you've got no support. And, you know, when there's no support there, you just don't know where to turn.
Research suggests men are 3 times more likely than women to keep the abuse a secret.
There's still a very big stigma about machoism with men.
Is there an element of shame or embarrassment in being a man and saying, I'm a victim of domestic violence?
Very much so, yeah. Well, because, you know, even other blokes, mates, you can't control your woman, you know. It's like, well, I'm not into controlling anyone.
Did you ever fight back?
I wouldn't say back, but I did hit her once. It's the only time I've ever hit a woman. And, yeah, she actually won because that's what her aim was to get me to hit her. It took her 12 hours.
What do you mean it took 12 hours?
From when she wanted me to hit her, from when I actually hit her. During that 12 hours, I had, probably got punched in the head about 50 times. I got spat in the face a dozen times. I got grabbed by the testicles and dragged to the ground half a dozen times. I got kicked, and eventually she cornered me and got in my face and I hit her.
So you're being honest?
Yeah, I was instantly sorry because, well, I could honestly say before that I'd never hit a woman in my life, and now I can't say that anymore.
I put up with so much as much as I possibly could.
Phil Hunt and his partner were a professional working couple. She's now overseas and he's being treated for post-traumatic stress disorder. Still haunted, he says, by flashbacks.
And I'm driving up the freeway doing 100 kilometres an hour and she's hitting me in the back of the head. She's abusing me. She's just screaming at me. Just continually just taunts and everything like that.
Do you think more men need to speak up?
It would probably help, but people got to be listening when you speak up anyway, don't they? If no one's listening, it doesn't matter how loud you yell.
Domestic violence is not acceptable by men or women.
And if you or someone you know is a victim of domestic violence, there is help available. Contact...
That they'll be taken seriously, but more often than not, they'll be laughed at or ridiculed. What do you mean? You let your wife hit you? Why would you let your wife hit you? Hit her back.
But Stratton swears he never did. He says he learned as a child over a game of Monopoly never to hit his sister, a lesson handed down by his father.
He told me one time, he said, you do that again and you'll pay for it. You don't hit girls.
A very different lesson from the one many little girls learned.
I was taught if any man ever says anything to me that's inappropriate, I get to slap him.
I can't think of anything bad enough. And Hollywood teaches that lesson too.
The latitude that women get is more substantial. They have a greater free fire zone.
Just so I can get the points across your mind, let's rewatch these 2 parts because they need to be rewatched.
There are powerful forces in this world devoting their full time on this planet to taking control of your mind, molding the way you think, shaping the way you perceive reality. They know that if they can change the way you think, they can control the way you behave. And what is behavior but merely the product and mirror of the way you think?
they'll be taken seriously, but more often than not, they'll be laughed at or ridiculed. What do you mean? You let your wife hit you? Why would you let your wife hit you? Hit her back.
But Stratton swears he never did. He says he learned as a child over a game of Monopoly never to hit his sister, a lesson handed down by his father.
He told me one time, he said, you do that again and you'll pay for it. You don't hit girls.
A very different lesson from the one many little girls learn.
I was taught if any man ever says anything to me that's inappropriate, I get to slap him.
I can't think of anything bad enough. And Hollywood teaches that lesson too.
The latitude that women get is more substantial. They have a greater free fire zone.
Some say even our nation's lawmakers have looked the other way. Back in 1994, Congress passed the Violence Against Women Act, or VAWA. It's $1.6 billion tax dollars.
It's done a lot of very concrete things that will actually increase the physical safety of not just women, but all people who use those services.
People we talked with all agree that VAWA has done good things for women, but most say it has done little or nothing for men. One Justice Department official told us flat out, quote, the program is designed to assist women. And take a look at this Justice Department document obtained by Fox 5. It acknowledges that for the purposes of VAWA, the department refers to, quote, victims as women and perpetrators as men. Critics say that's un-American.
Clearly it's unconstitutional.
Congressman John Conyers sponsored the Violence Against Women Act.
I worry about constitutional issues, and this is not one of them.
National Organization for Women Executive Vice President Kim Gandy is one of VAWA's strongest advocates. She says the bill does not discriminate.
Most all of the provisions are quite gender neutral.
But if the language of the bill is gender neutral, why not make the name gender neutral?
What's in a name?
Maryland Congresswoman Connie Morella says that there is something in a name. She says the Violence Against Women Act is called that because more often than not, women are the victims of what used to be called a dirty little secret.
That secret really affected women far more than men. And women were contained within their little shell as a hostage.
She's right. Women are more likely to be victims. Morella admits they are perpetrators too. In fact, Richard Gellis says there are 2 million women in the U.S. who hit their male partners. Take out those who are emotionally provoked and those who hit in self-defense, and he says you're still left with 100,000 women who beat their male partners. Author Phil Cook says hardly anybody's talking about that.
There is, I believe, a deliberate effort to give out misinformation about domestic violence for political reasons.
Cook penned the only book ever written that focuses strictly on male victims of domestic violence. He's been speaking out, and so has Barbara Ladine. Ladine works for a group called the Independent Women's Forum. She's a regular critic of some of VAWA's biggest supporters.
I think the average taxpayer would be appalled. Also because the average taxpayer has been beaten around the head by the media and by the government to understand that this is a female problem done by males.
Lobbyists for men's organizations say the American taxpayer has bought into those negative stereotypes of men.
They stay after work, they have sex with their secretaries, they go to the bar with their buddies, they get drunk, they go out and have sex with the waitress, and then they come home, beat the wives, and have sex with the children.
Back in the 1970s, as America fought a war in Vietnam, another battle, the one between couples, came into the spotlight here at home. Back then, people thought only men could be abusers. Claudia Diaz says that got women the help they needed.
And it was a great paradigm. It worked, it was effective, and it's not realistic.
Now, she and some others agree it's time for VAWA's supporters to make a change.
They like the spotlight to be on the women. The spotlight has been on the women for 20 years, and I have no problem with that in one sense because I want women to get help. But I think it's time to turn on the stage lights and see who else is on stage.
Researcher Richard Gellis says he's even had his life threatened by people who disagree with his conclusion that men are victims too.
How many death threats have you gotten?
10, 12.
Rick Stratton says that sort of active effort to hide information is dangerous.
I can't be an isolated incident. I can't be. And I know that there's something that's got to be done about it because the longer we stay quiet and we cover and we lie, the worse it's going to get. And we're going to be using body bags.
Counselors say say not dealing with both sides of domestic violence means in the long run, kids suffer.
In the final analysis, it doesn't matter whether dad's hitting mom or mom's hitting dad, the children are watching and they're learning the wrong lesson.
The children learn to use violence in their homes, and they pick people who know that dance, and the violence just keeps going on and on and on.
On and on as children grow up and live in the shadow of their parents' mistakes.
And hopefully you caught the message out of this video, because it's so in your face. It's so in your face. Social conditioning, brainwashing, making your belief system what somebody else wants it to be, getting you to think with the brain in the jar. You turn your head, you look the other way. You have a world full of double standards and you see nothing wrong with it, because you're not willing to open your eyes. And if you don't open your eyes, it don't fit into what other people are telling you, because they're all brainwashed the same way you are. And you all got to fit in, right? You know, it's sad. It's pathetic. It's sickening. You've placed one gender up on a pedestal so high for so long. This is the results. Exactly. And then the division. You know, divide and conquer. And you know, when you deliberately divided the genders for divide and conquer, break up the family unit. And meanwhile, you keep dunk slamming the guy and lying about the guy. And the domestic abuse shelter should show you something right there. It should have been a big red flag. But the one thing is for sure, if you don't wake up, you don't understand, there's no help for you. Because the truth is, true forced loneliness, TFL, is real. MGTOW, men going their own way, would be the best cure to wake the woman gender up, and other men up in vaginas. But that won't happen neither, because most of MGTOW are fake. They're like I showed you at the beginning, the transgender. That's right, the guy dressed like the hot female that fooled y'all. Okay, fake. Wasn't a real girl, was fake. Well, that's how MGTOW is. They're fake. The majority of these so-called MGTOWers, the majority, not all of them, but the majority, aren't going their own way at all. Never have been, never will be. They're only doing it to fit into a clit. So they'll lie to you and deceive you to make you believe they're doing something they're not. Okay, so that's the reason MGTOW can't work. I mean, MGTOW could work otherwise. It really could. But it can't work as long as it's filled full of fakes and ain't willing to live up to the truth and do as they're preaching. Because there's no way they're going to do as they're preaching. No way. That's just all an act, right in your face. Not really going on. Oh, yeah, I'm sure there are a few true MGTOWers, men going their own way, but that's just it, a few. But that's all right. Keep turning your back. Keep denying the truth when it's in your face. And as they said in these reports, body bags, more deaths. That's right. As more men kill women, more women kill men. All in the name of staying divided and being dumb and not understanding that you've all been brainwashed by your government and your media and your television set and a social conditioning machine. And you know right from wrong. And when you create double standards, it's because you're hiding something. Just like when you say there's a taboo topic, it's not to be talked about. It's because you're hiding. You're hiding something you don't want discussed because you want it the way it is. You don't care if it's wrong. You don't care how many people it destroys or hurts. Because it's all about your own selfishness once again, isn't it? That's right. Another big clue in the dating arena that should throw red flags is when you say you gotta have game. When you gotta have game in order to get a date. Well, so you gotta be able to lie and manipulate and twist and fuck with somebody else's emotions, excuse my language. All in the name of playing mind games, because that's what game is. Who cares who we hurt along the way? We don't care who we hurt along the way, right? But you can only hurt somebody so many times before bad things happen, like this. And the last clip is, well, that's what I've told people for years. You create your own killers. That's right, because people do. They create the people who kill them through the way they treat them. Because people have this sick mindset and think they can treat anybody however they damn well want. Do anything to somebody they damn well want, and that there'll be no repercussions. That they'll just freely get by with it. So when you do that, you continue to abuse somebody and abuse somebody and abuse somebody and abuse somebody, bad things happen. That's right. And sometimes you wind up creating your own killer. That's the reason I put that in there, because that was a guy and his ex-girlfriend who he stabbed. That's right. Sort of like what you've seen in the video itself, where she stabbed him. That's right. Or she set the guy on fire. That's right. See, it's not one-sided. It never has been. The real statistics is what the man said. Every 15 seconds there'll be a female abused. Every 15 seconds there'll be a male abused by a female. That's because the numbers are pretty square even across the board. And the only reason you don't know the domestic numbers are even is because what the media and the government's famous for doing. Reporting one half of a story. Reporting one half of a story. Reporting one half of a story. Because see, if we report only half of a story, that's right, showing only the abuse that happens to women and not men, and we bury, sort of like what John F. Kennedy said about governments. When they make mistakes, they'll bury it. Well, it's the same thing you're doing here. You bury the problem with the men. You bury it not to be seen. Not to be seen. Not to be seen. That helps to create social conditioning. That helps to set the mindset of people to say, well, no, see, you don't see reports on men being abused. See. Yeah, brainwashing. Convincing you something is so when it's not. Deceiving you into believing a lie. And then when somebody tries to point out the truth to you, you want to turn your head and look the other way. Or you want to attack them. That's right. We know how that goes, right? But I want to get that out there so for the people who wondered why we talked to them about the political end of the deal, the true forced loneliness, why, they couldn't figure out why. We were talking about political, dating and political, all on one channel. It was easy. Because the divisions have been created by governments, by the political end of the arena, and the media. That's where it comes from. The Violence Against Women's Act and the way it was wrote wasn't no accident. That wasn't an accident. That was deliberate. And the reason men fight so hard to try to blah, 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 and why there's only one domestic shelter for men in the entire United States. Yeah, it's all right here in your face. So that first clip I showed you should ring a bell with you. See how much truth there is to that? That there's people out here that want you to think with that brain in that jar. What I've been telling you all along. And unfortunately, the majority of you are. Sad. Wake up.